Welcome, everybody, to the Idaho 97 Project Podcast Episode number 3. We are still in the midst of the Idaho legislative session. We are in the midst of run-up to the Idaho primary. And there's some crazy stuff happening down here in Boise with militias, which we're going to talk about today, all that stuff. First of all, I want to just jump straight to Alicia Abbott in North Idaho, who is tracking the legislature for us pretty well. And there is a whole bunch of voter suppression bills that seem to be stalled out. Is that right, Alicia?
Yeah, we're coming to an end in the legislature. So there's a lot of bills that are still waiting for committee hearings. And luckily, most of those are voter suppression bills. We've got a handful of them. I'm just going to list off the numbers really quickly. HB 439, 693, HB 761, B 1375, SB 1376, and B 692 are all voter suppression bills. 2 of those have been voted down in the Senate State Affairs Committee, and the rest of them are still waiting for a hearing. And for all intents and purposes, folks, this is a very good sign that our senators will not be hearing these voter suppression bills. You know, Rep. Dorothy Moon, who is running for Secretary of State, tried to put a monster version of her previous voter suppression bills up at the very end. That was the HB 671. And it's just as stalled as her previous attempts were. So we're just waiting and watching, hoping that these bills don't get hearings. So keep your eyes open for those just in case.
And Alicia, can I just ask, so HB 761, which is hashtag dishonest dots bill, third attempt at this. Now, a lot of what's in there are what were in the Senate bills, right? We're already, the Senate committee said, no, we're not going to do this, right?
Oh, yes, that's exactly what happened with the bills that Souza, Senator Mary Souza, who was also running for Idaho Secretary of State, she tried to put her own versions of voter suppression bills, and those were the actual bills that received votes in committee hearings, and they did not move forward in the process. So those are other indicators why we're very hopeful that these voter suppression bills are going to go into a drawer and never be seen again, and at least until next year.
2 more bills that we've been tracking also being stalled by the Senate, thankfully. Emily, did you want to take that? Or Mike?
I do want to take that. The aptly numbered HB 666 would criminalize librarians. Looks like this bill is going to sit there. We're very happy about this, but this basically puts people in a position of telling other people what is appropriate for them to read or not, and is completely ridiculous and puts librarians in a bad position. So hopefully this bill will stay in a 666 land and not come out. And then HB 675, this Idaho Senate did put out at least this week saying it was not going to move forward. So this is a bill that criminalizes families seeking gender affirming care for their children. Very happy this bill is staying there. We didn't love the rationale they came up with, but a dead bill is a dead bill, and we're very happy about that. And we're hoping they just stay in those drawers probably about another week. It sounds like they've targeted the session ending maybe March 25th, but we're not sure about that. But that's kind of what people are talking about.
We'll do fingers crossed for the session ending, right? And Nate, I just want to add one thing about both of these bills, right? There is a real theme here in violating individual and family freedom in an effort to basically vilify people who are different or people that you might not relate to. But also what you need to understand is it's an effort to vilify our fellow Idahoans. And this is something that none of us should put up with. This state. One of the things that makes Idaho so good is our attitudes towards freedom. And it used to be, hey, you're okay, I'm okay, let's all just do our own thing. But now we're starting to get these morality nanny state bills, like we called them last week. And we really have to stay vigilant on this. And as Emily pointed out, the Senate, they did put out a statement, but the statement is problematic in that it's still vilifying our fellow Idahoans, children in this case. And so we really need to be vigilant moving forward.
And I mean, it also, there's another Senate and House resolution out there that didn't get much attention, talking about the 1619 Project and the teaching of history, which, they don't say like banning books or burning books, but they are literally censoring, journalism from the New York Times. We could debate journalism from the New York Times, but we can't censor journalism from the New York Times. And, a book, which I have on my nightstand, the 1619 Project, is a review of history that every Idahoan has a right to look at if they want. And our elected officials, not like bemoaning information that Idahoans should have access to is a terrible form of censorship, just like the HB 666 messing with librarians is a form of censorship. Yeah, we can't have that. I'm going to throw you all a kind of a curveball here. We chatted about this a week or two ago, but why, the Senate is known as a more deliberative body, like a little more august, senior group of lawmakers, perhaps, but they have the exact same districts, the exact same terms, the exact same voter bases. So why do we see such a stark difference between the way the House votes and the way the Senate votes? Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
I do. And I'm sure a lot of us do. Oh, you say we got thoughts? I mean, at the very base level, right? This extremism it's a real scourge, right? We've always had a little bit of extremism in Idaho. It's always been popping up here and there in the legislature. But really, what overran the legislature were these allied groups like Idaho Freedom Foundation, Idaho Second Amendment Association, and these groups. And it's pretty clear they targeted the House first. And in a real just basic fundamental, how did this happen? That's how it happened. But also that means the Senate is as easy to lose to these folks because of the similarities in elections and districts and everything else. It's identical.
Thanks for that, Mike. I'll just add, if you look at the folks who are still serving in the Senate, they've been there a long time. So it really is like comparing, someone who's been in a position for 12, 15 years to someone who's been in a position for 2 or 3. And that's what we're seeing is a lot more turnover and churn in the House. And then in the Senate, people are serving for a very long time. And those people, say things to me like, I remember when Idaho wasn't this way. I remember when we could get along. I remember when we didn't have to attack other people and attack fellow Idahoans. And that's the thing that I remember. And is one of the reasons Idaho 97 matters so much to me. And I do this work is because I remember even being a kid in a very conservative area, we didn't attack other people. And so I think it is just really them sticking it out. And thank goodness for some of them for sticking it out for 15 years and staying in that. So they have that memory of Idaho. They haven't bought into this myth of, this, what I call the rhino myth of like, here's how Idaho has to do things. We have to attack other people. We have to make other people's lives hard. So yeah. Alicia, what are your thoughts?
Well, Mike's spot on about how they've strategized. I mean, we know that they've started getting more House seats in recent years, but before that, they started on our school boards and library boards. So this is just a progression of that, tried and true methods. Start running for something smaller in your community and work your way up towards a higher office. And, we really have heard it online in the chatter from these very far right groups that the Senate is their target this primary election. I think it is very important that we all pay attention to the folks who are seeking higher office from the House because they do have that experience now, and they're looking to leverage it into a higher level in the Senate where they can disrupt the more deliberative body. So they can push more of these very far right, very anti-Idaho bills.
Yeah. Well, and people too. So we've been looking at the list of people who are filed to run for office in May and November. We'll have more analysis on that pretty soon. But it looks like some of these far right extremist legislators have no opposition, especially up north where you are, Alicia.
Yeah, there's three that are, I would say, favorable mentions that I'm surprised that people did not take the opportunity to run against these folks. My rep, soon to be no longer, she's moved from District 1 to District 2. Rep Heather Scott, she's running unopposed. She does not have a primary challenger. She does not have a Democratic opponent. Into District 3, another North Idaho district, Doug Okunovitz and Vito Barbieri are also running unopposed in their primary with no Democratic challenger. So we can count on those three extremists to be back in the legislature again. Doug O is somebody who carried voter suppression bills with Dorothy Moon this session. Vito Barbieri is on the record asking why Planned Parenthood hasn't been bombed off of State Street in Boise yet. And Heather Scott, she has a laundry list of things that are just horrible, including being one of Ammon Bundy's biggest proponents. So yeah, I'm disappointed to see that. Luckily, there are a lot of Republicans stepping up to challenge these extreme candidates across the state. And we're definitely going to help you figure out who those folks are.
And, you know, that example you gave with Vito Barbieri, right? I mean, that is the core of extremism. We aren't dumb, right? We know people are going to disagree. And we know that we have followers, and we have other people who have different opinions about Planned Parenthood. But where we need to agree and come together as a community is it's not okay to talk about violence towards a group that you disagree with, right? And it's really not okay for an elected state leader to do that.
Yeah, but it is their strategy. That's how they consolidate power, and that's part of the reason folks aren't running against them up in Alicia's neck of the woods. Fear. I mean, real and justifiable fear. But, you know, there's things we can do about that, and we cannot be afraid. You know, we don't have to be afraid. We still have power as a large group of Idahoans working together. What are some things we are doing? Well, particularly, let's see, along the lines of voter registration in the primary. What can we do this week to keep hope alive?
Well, first and foremost, Nathaniel, we need to get unaffiliated voters plugged into a primary ballot with candidates. You know, most of the primary races in Idaho, the contested races are happening in the GOP primary. Is essential that everybody get to the polls and weigh in on primary candidates this year. Online registration is going to be open until April. Unaffiliated voters at this point are still going to be able to request their ballot on election day. So just be very aware that unaffiliated primary voter ballots do not contain candidates, only local issues and judges. If you want to weigh in on candidates, you need to get plugged into a ballot. You can do so. You can do so by visiting voteidaho.gov, the Idaho Secretary of State's page.
I mean, we're bringing you new content every week, but we're going to keep saying this every week also. If you aren't affiliated with a party in this state, you're not going to really get a choice in May. And so let us help you help your state and, you know, get on a party ballot. And frankly, I mean, I think I can just say, like, most ballots for the Republican Party are the ones that have multiple candidates on them, right?
That is right. Statewide, I'm only seeing one contested Democratic primary race. And so, you know, the folks, especially in rural Idaho, not necessarily in our metropolitan areas, I would suggest really considering getting hooked into a GOP primary ballot this year. We do not want these extreme candidates going any further in the process than an election. So it's important for all of us to understand that sitting the primary out means that we're willing to sacrifice the safety and well-being of other more marginalized Idahoans. I mean, I am a problematic white woman sometimes, I'm going to admit that. And I am not willing to sacrifice my gay and lesbian neighbors. I'm not willing to sacrifice Idahoans of color by not participating in the lesser of evils. So I myself am registered Republican for this primary, and I'm proud to be out combating extremism in this way. I think it's really important for us to consider building that voter bloc against extremism.
And it's important to understand how extremism works. You know, Alicia, you gave examples that we've all known our whole lives, right? These are communities that are marginalized, right? But you know, these folks are going after librarians, right? And that's how extremism works, right? It goes after one group, it gets you angry at another group. We'll talk here in a second about a bill up there. It's targeting the judiciary, right? They get you angry. get people. They get you angry at the press. They get you angry at municipal leaders. I've heard rumor that they try to get you angry at the Idaho 97, and that's how it works. And so if you want to stop that, you got to stop extremism.
We're not angry.
No, we're laid back, man. I'm in Freak Alley.
Well,
We have an occasional rant. It's okay.
so look, last minute bills are never really a good thing. HB 782 has just passed the House, a few hours before we're recording this podcast. What are legislators trying to do here to impact our judges in Idaho? Mike? Yeah.
So, I mean, one of the real hallmarks of our legislature is that it wants to control everything. Right. It really, if you had a kid in kindergarten acting like this, you'd be like, that kid's a brat. They want to control everything. And this is another step to do that. Now, I talked to a former Supreme Court justice about this and some other senior attorneys, and some of them are thinking part of this is because the Supreme Court is holding the legislature accountable, which is its job. The legislature tried to take our right to have voter initiatives away. And the Supreme Court said, oh, no, that you can't do that, right? And so a lot of folks think that this is a shot across their bow, trying to say, no, we can do this. And if you're not going to do it, we're basically going to blackmail you, right, by doing this. But this bill is actually worse than that, right? It even goes further than that. So the whole concept of our republic is that we have co-equal branches of government, right? Co-equal branches of government. That means that the legislature isn't more powerful than the governor or the Supreme Court, and vice versa. Our legislature does not fundamentally understand that, or maybe they understand it, they don't agree with it. And then this is not all of our legislators, right? If you have the chance, go listen to the debate from this morning on this bill. We've got some good legislators who understand this, but that also shows you that this was kind of railroaded through, right? And that's how our legislature also operates, is they get some real important bills and they wait right to the end when we're all tired, and then they rush them through. And, I was told by some of the legislators in the room, there were some industry groups in there that were helping, that wanted to see this go through. And the leadership of the House, Scott Bedke, who can't stand up to anything else, but boy, he can stand up for things that these industry group wants, is like pushing people, right, to do this. So there's something going on with this bill. But what it basically does is it takes control away from the Idaho bar, the state bar. It takes control away from the judiciary and hands the control of selecting judges, judicial standards, and some other things that go into this committee to the governor, like 70-something%, right? And so historically, what we see when states fall to extremism is the last step of that is taking over the judiciary, right? Because once the judiciary is taken over, and this is where you start seeing cronyism, right? If the governor appoints 72% of the people who sit on this board, well, you can bet the governor's pals are going to be the ones that get put in there. And so they start putting people in to the judiciary, and then so all of a sudden the judiciary doesn't protect the voting rights of the people, right? Because other powerful interests don't want that to happen. And that's exactly what this bill is doing. So what you can do about this is we have an action up going right now, and you can go to our website and the action will be there to write the Senate, right? This has to be stopped in the Senate and say, don't do this, right? Stop reaching. And this is overreach. This is, again, legislative overreach. Please stop doing this. And we'll have good talking points in there. But also, if you go do it, put your own words in there right at the very top, right? And tell them why you personally, Idahoan, is writing this email, right? To make sure that they hear it from you too. But that's going on right now.
Yeah, and if you need a refresher on the three equal branches of government, the old Schoolhouse Rock singy-songy video, you can look that up on YouTube.
Oh man, you're not going to do it for us, Nathaniel?
We might not have time. There also might be some, other issues with it.
Yeah, I want to add one more thing before we move on from 782, because I watched the entire floor debate. We have some excellent legislators in there who were opposed to this bill. And something I found interesting in the end is that the very people who supported House Bill 782 to give Governor Little more discretion and more power over the judiciary were also mostly the same people who opposed his power during COVID-19. And I find that action very alarming. And it also almost signals to me that they are very confident that Janice McGeehan is going to win that primary. If that's their confidence level, I think we should probably be rethinking how committed we are to participation in voter-to-voter outreach during the primary session.
Yeah, right on. All right, well, I think we've reached the exciting point in our podcast for our third segment, My Far Right Nut. And I'm going to turn it over to our, militia expert up there in North Idaho to discuss who is our far right nut. I think, anybody who's watching the news should know who it is, but.
Yeah. Yo, let's get stupid, y'all. Yo, homeboy, you seen him? See, fool. My nuts, man. Who you think? Oh.
Our right nut of the week, folks, is none other than Ammon Bundy, who is running to be Idaho's governor in the Independent Party as an unaffiliated candidate. Formerly, he was running in the GOP primary and had a change of heart. Ammon Bundy, born in September 1st, 1975 in Bunkerville, Nevada, has no formal education and has spent his career as a car fleet management professional and a part-time melon farmer under his father, Cliven. We all know Ammon best from his political stunts, specifically his anti-government standoffs with the federal government regarding grazing fees in 2014 and in 2016 at the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge, there was an occupation. And you know what? He has not put the brakes on his disruption campaign because this week he disrupted one of Idaho's biggest hospitals and caused some major problems in our local area. I want to turn this over to Miss Emily Walton now because we've got Idaho's premier Ammon Bundy heckler in the house.
First of all,
Get in the car, Ammon.
yeah. Some of you might have seen my video. I was out front of the State House last year, about this time, maybe February last year. And I am just sitting out front because it was during COVID. I was staying outside, trying to be careful. I was sitting out there talking to a friend. And I see someone coming out on a cart down in front of the State House. And I was like, there's only one person who gets carted out of this State House. And it's Ammon Bundy. So I jump up, heckle him, tell him to get in the car. He uses an argument, these police officers don't have any authority, blah, 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 whatever. Anyway, so there's a couple things I have to say about Ammon Bundy. He's not a rancher. Sometimes people see that hat and they're like, oh, here's a rancher. He's not. That hat is a costume. The press needs to do a much better job of not just calling him a rancher. And then, I'll say this, about those St. Luke's protests that we see. They're very disturbing. St. Luke's put out a statement. There's a lot of information and news out there about how disturbing that is. And, we have people reach out to us and talk about what can we do about this. And I think the biggest thing that's actually the most effective thing that we can really do is do what we're doing. Try to get better people to win those primaries and exert a lot of political pressure on the legislature, because the more that these people who are putting in place these violent tactics, these fear tactics, the more that they see that those are not going to get them what they want, they'll be less incentivized to do it. Now, some people are still going to do that, but we just want to make sure that doesn't help them build their power. And, I will say myself personally and us as an organization, we have not felt like it was a good idea to go out there and meet them on the street and battle anything out. That is, we believe, very, very dangerous. And they're ready to be violent. They're happy to be violent. And we just would not want to put anyone in a position of facing that kind of violence. That's not how we're going to solve this issue. It just isn't. We're going to solve it through other means. So I just want to bring that up because people have been reaching out to us and asking, what can we do? And then I think, reaching out and supporting folks. If you've got friends, family who are healthcare workers, talk about how sorry you are that they're facing this awful kind of thing. Talk about the support that you feel for them, and anything like that for our civil servants who face danger because we have political extremism here with people who are willing to be violent and have showed that repeatedly.
Yeah. And what we need to understand, right, is the degree and level of this sort of behavior that's happening, right? And who is letting it happen, Right. So so what happened with St. Luke's? St. Luke's had to go into lockdown. Right. We had to go into lockdown. There were mothers breaking down in the NICU. I know people who couldn't move to treatment, who couldn't go in for treatment. Lots of us know this. We have lots of stories about this. And it was all because Ammon Bundy, while on break from being on trial, where he was actually found guilty for, I think he was found guilty for, I think, the incident where you saw him go out of the State House. And so while on trial for that, he called for his supporters to leave the courthouse and go down to St. Luke's. And so St. Luke's was alarmed. But this behavior has been happening nonstop. Right? The Bundy protesters were in a pre-January 6th protest at the Idaho State Capitol, where a door was damaged and their damage was done. If you ask them, they say, oh, it's all confusing. No, it's not confusing. We have it on tape. Y'all did it. We see Ammon Bundy forcing his way into a health district. So, and I'm amazed he didn't get charged by this. Like, he actually physically contacted employees and pushed his way in, bullied his way into a health district meeting because he feels like he has the right to be there. And if he decides what he can do, he gets to do it. I mean, just like a high school bully, right? Or not even a high school bully, elementary school bully, right? We have all these freedom groups that are very closely aligned. And these are actually the groups, like Health Freedom is one of the groups. A lot of their folks are actually down at St. Luke's there, who also do a lot of these protests. And so these Health Freedom groups, you may have seen, Ada County has a commissioner had a commissioner named Diana Lacciando. She was in a meeting and these folks went and terrorized her children while they were home. And you can actually see her as a mother just breaking down, like, my children are in danger, I have to leave. And we see this all over. Like last April, they showed up at Judge Manweiler's house. He's the magistrate judge that presided over the first hearing with him. And there's a whole issue with him. I don't know if it was strong arming or voluntarily, but Ada County Commissioner Ryan Davidson went and talked to the judge inappropriately. We have a finding from the Attorney General's office that said that this was inappropriate and he shouldn't have done that. But yeah, all these things that deal with our civil society are breaking down, and why it's so important to deal with your elected representatives is you're never going to stop people like Ammon Bundy, right? They're going to be there. They're going to behave the way they're going to behave. And that's not the point, right? What we don't want to do is empower them. And you can go and look. And we've got pictures of Representative Chad Christensen, Representative Tammy Nichols, Representative Ron Nate, and others, Representative Hanks, who were at the protest at St. Luke's the day before. The IFF's main legislative affairs person was also there, right? The day before, and being greeting and hugging and shaking hands with these Health Freedom people and these Ammon Bundy people. That's what gives them power. And we need to get those people out of office, because those are the people who are damaging and destroying our Idaho.
Yeah, I agree. We haven't really talked about what happened at St. Luke's. I think everybody's read enough news about that. We don't need to delve into that incident. But needless to say, I feel that our legislators have a mighty hand in the type of violence that's being incited in our state. And I'm really disappointed that also our legislature hasn't taken any action against Priscilla Giddings, Carrie Hanks, et cetera, for doxing the law enforcement professionals, the social workers, healthcare professionals who are all involved in this situation. It speaks volumes about the character of who's leading us right now.
Yeah, and this kind of incident that happened this week at St. Luke's is exactly what spurred us to action for the Idaho 97 project originally. It was very similar kinds of protests outside of health districts that were just trying to figure out what was going on with the early pandemic and trying to protect us, the people of Idaho. And they were being overrun with armed people from, so-called militia groups. It's hard to do on the podcast, but, we try to put freedom in air quotes every time we say it, because their definition of freedom is not what true freedom looks like. Real freedom is feeling safe and comfortable in your community and in your society, safe going to the hospital, safe going to your job, safe running for office. And we have people who are making us feel unsafe out there and facing zero consequences for it. And that's what the Idaho 97 project is about. Another thing I want to say, it feels like they're everywhere and that they are a huge presence. And we know that they're not. We know that it's the same faces we see. We know that his calls to action are encouraging fewer and fewer people to show up. I mean, I think Bundy himself is kind of pissed today because nobody's showing up for his, call to action, call to arms. We named this group the Idaho 97 Project for many reasons, but one of them is that we really believe that the vast majority of Idahoans see this behavior as terrible behavior and not fitting of how Americans go about their business. And so you have to keep that in mind when you see them in the news and on social media all the time. It's, it's certainly newsworthy. It's appropriate to cover, but you get an outsized feeling about their presence and status when really, they're coming off of fake ranches, and I don't know. I keep thinking, like, do these folks have jobs? Like, how do they have all the time to go stand on the corner outside of our hospital and yell at people, But I mean, maybe that sounds terrible to say, but I mean.
I don't think it's terrible to say at all, Nathaniel. You want to know why? Because for a very long time, People's Rights Network, Ammon Bundy's group, has not been registered with the Idaho Secretary of State. They are operating majority of the time illegally under our state laws. There are plenty of statutes out there that I think that can be leveraged against people like Ammon Bundy. And we just need to find the leaders who are willing to do that. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
I think
lack of them. Oh, go ahead.
Real quick. I think it's a fair question because this really does go back to this idea of the afflicted entrepreneurs. They are making money off of this. They're putting calls out there. They're raising money. They're making things up. They're absolutely lying about situations and then leveraging that to make money. And that is why they can go and cause enormous violent problems for civil society whenever they want, because they're raising money off of it. And it's just very disgusting. Mike, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. And I mean, this is an issue, right? Enforcement is an issue, right? There are a lot of statutes out there. There's the ability to enforce. And what we're finding is there's a real lack of desire to enforce. So this isn't just the Bundys, right? I mean, you can't do this. We have statutes out there, but we don't have a willingness to take risk in enforcement, because sometimes you're going to lose, right? But the problem is we have a lot of folks who don't want to take the cases because they feel like they're going to lose the case, right? And I'll tell you, this is going back to my lawyer days and my law professor days. If you're not losing, you're not pushing hard enough, and that's a fact, right? You're just not pushing to the limit, and we need our Attorney General's office to push harder. We need our county prosecutors to push harder. We need our federal prosecutors to push harder. Right now, law enforcement is not engaging, and we need that to happen. So part of this is at the feet of our own government not doing its job. But one of the reasons they're not doing their job is because of extremism everywhere and all these different people who are getting elected and put in there. So this is an ecosystem that needs to be righted. The ship needs to be righted right now.
All right.
I just double checked the Idaho Secretary of State's website. Ammon Bundy has 0 businesses registered in Idaho. He has 0 political action committees registered in Idaho. This man's breaking laws openly, and I think it's high time that we put a little bit more pressure on our local county prosecutors if our legislators are going to continue on the same path.
All right, well, that's been another amazing episode of the Idaho 97 podcast. I don't want to leave it on this note exactly. So I just want to say I have planted some seeds for my garden this week, and I'm feeling really optimistic about that. Anybody else have any good news to share?
I got news. I just want to say, I came on this program expressly to say to our healthcare workers and our civil servants, most of us see you, we believe in you. We've got the data. I'm watching people's reactions across social media platforms. The vast majority of people are with you. And we're just trying to figure out how can we get the rest to come along. But y'all just keep on doing the good job that you're doing. You're doing a wonderful job, and our communities are blessed to have you.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, and we will see you again next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
I think that is a wrap.